This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's our pleasure to have with us tonight Dr. Buck Melton. Welcome, Buck.
Always glad to be here.
Well, we've had a lot of enlightening conversation on different subjects, making observations about the world. One of the things that's going on right now is very unexpectedly, Donald Trump is sort of the front runner in the Democratic, in the Republican electoral process right now, and it's really sort of a puzzling turn of events. Do you have any observations on why this unusual events occurred?
Well, just that it's certainly a fascinating idea. When I think in American history of parallels, the closest parallel that I can come up with, and it's not a particularly close one, but there are some similarities, would be the rise of Andrew Jackson, who was the first true popular American hero that we ever had. Benjamin Franklin, of course, is sometimes called the first American, and he was held in great esteem for his depth of learning. He was the American who was really very well recognized in Europe. There was George Washington, who was tremendously respected, of course. But the American people tended to view both Franklin and Washington with a bit of awe, they standing away with some respect. Whereas Jackson, you can hear in your head the masses going USA, USA with the Battle of New Orleans, the subjugation of the Creeks, and so when Jackson ran for president, they didn't even care what Jackson stood for. It was their man who was running. And then when the vagaries of the electoral system denied Jackson the White House in 1824, they were so furious they went out and founded a new party, the Democratic Party, with the sole purpose of electing Jackson. And Jackson, of course, was up against John Quincy Adams, and the election banners and flyers said, look, we know that John Quincy Adams has given a lot to this country. He is tremendously educated, he's tremendously experienced, but we don't care. We want Jackson because he speaks for the common man. He speaks for us. And in that sense, I think you're seeing a little bit of a type of populism propelling Trump.
Well, now, do you think there's a connection between the fact that Andrew Jackson has become so unfashionable? He's going off the, what bill is he on, the 20? I mean, they're taking his picture off. He's anathema to politically correct circles. I mean, and I think the Jefferson Jackson Day dinners, they've stopped, so people, they want to dismiss him. And is that in some ways this degradation of Andrew Jackson or what he stands for, is Donald Trump sort of a crazy response to that, if I can say it? There's a relation between those two?
Well, I think there is an oblique relation that if you look at a demagogue who comes to power, usually there has to be something that propels him. And in Jackson's case, it was a sense of national pride. But there can be negative things as well. That I think that the American people feel at some level that things are out of control, and that neither party is even trying to respond to it. And so I think you're seeing, well, rage may be too strong a word, but certainly very strong discontent with the way things have been going. And you're seeing that a nerve has been struck by something or by some combination of events. And therefore, they are not behaving in what I might call a rational or a reflective way. They're going with their gut instead. And thus you see these runaway polling figures. And it's got to be something that they feel very strongly about. to get this kind of reaction.
Now, let's see, what are Hegelian kind of things, thesis and antithesis or whatever. So you have,
Yes.
there's always a reaction to a particular event. So there's sort of a blowback, to use your terminology. So actually the country has gone, it was fair to say, pretty far to the left with President Obama. I mean, I think that's a neutral thing to say. His general viewpoints are substantially to the left, and the country is, I'm not sure whether you'd call it a centralist country or right-leaning country. I don't know. Maybe demographically it's made it toward the left. But it's almost inevitable that sort of a more extreme person would appear. And if you look at Romney, if one can say that, I mean, isn't comparing Romney and Trump, they're both very wealthy. They were quite wealthy, but the affect of the two was extraordinarily different. Just to make a sort of connection with Andrew Jackson, not that I, it's a far-fetched one, but Andrew Jackson was a very pugnacious guy. He fought 9 duels. You know, you talk to me, I'll kick your teeth in or whatever. And Donald Trump doesn't really fight duels, but anybody that criticizes him, he's ferociously assaultive, far past what a genteel behavior would indicate the correct thing to do.
Yes.
But he certainly would viciously attack anybody, the same way that maybe Andrew Jackson would fight a duel, and maybe that resonates with people that feel like that's their social values would be.
Yes.
You know, I'll punch you back if you hit me, and all this Romney-ist restraint was so contrary to their worldview. It's sort of a more natural human to some people.
Yes. Well, if that's the case, Trump is not the person who has started. I mean, we've been seeing some of this building up to it in the past. One thing that comes to mind immediately is President Obama's rather infamous statement that rural America is clinging to their guns and religion because they're I mean, that speaks very dismissively of a large part of the populace, and I think that, you know, that a lot of America is saying, okay, then we will do it. We will become what you accuse us of, and you see it happening in the support for Trump. I think you're seeing two things. I think on the one hand, you are seeing domestically America definitely move to the left, to break down the boundaries between America and the rest of the world, to denounce what have been traditional American values in terms of economics, in terms of political freedoms. The Republicans, you have seen, in the words of John Quincy Adams, have gone abroad in search of monsters to slay. And I'm thinking about George W. Bush and his escapades in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so the American people are reacting to both of these. That if you looked at the Republican debate on foreign policy, everyone but Trump was saying we need to go over there and fight ISIS in the Middle East. And Trump's saying, look, we don't want to go over there, we just want to keep them out of here. So in that sense, you're seeing the resurgence of a paleoconservatism, an isolationism of the way that the Republicans used to be 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. And you're also seeing a move back to the right in terms of domestic policy.
Well, looking at the demographic makeup of the country, and the rural-urban kind of thing, the age differentials, sundry things like that, extraordinary change has taken place in the country, unimaginable change over the past 50 years. It really is quite a different country. Yes. It's very different. And I think Trump is playing into people that don't like those changes.
Yes.
And in some ways, I wonder about this. I mean, many people I know, very nice people, take enormous offense to Trump and is demeaning minorities. You know, it's extraordinary. And is this the start of sort of a Austro-Hungarian kind of country? How does one put together such a diverse population? How can you do that? It's not an easy task, and indeed, I think the politicians have neglected the difficulty of doing that.
Yes.
If you look at the percentage of foreign-born people, it's like over 1920. It's extraordinary, and the sort of, I guess, moral demeanor of the country. That what you'd say was, we can all unite around this particular viewpoint. That's not so much in evidence. And so there are all these competing ideas of what's right and wrong. It's a very diverse country. And how all this self shakes it out?
Yes.
Are we going to have a variety of political parties that each represent some, like the European model? You might have some people that, I don't know, that are Canadian, well, not Canadian, they're the state of Maine lobster fishermen or whatever.
Yes.
They've got their party, and Latinos in San Diego have their party, and I don't know what transgender people in Chicago have theirs. I mean, so there's just a cacophony of different interests, so making it very, very hard to have national cohesion.
Yes, I think it's possible, and I think the jury's still out. But I think that the Republican Party is in serious trouble, and I think this is one of the things that's led to the rise of Trump. That I think that the American people, that there's a very strong feeling among a lot of American people that they have been led from the top down to places that they don't necessarily want to go, and that they no longer trust the top. For instance, we'll go back to the Democrats for a moment, that in the end, the Affordable Care Act was pushed through rules mechanics, because when Ted Kennedy died, who replaced him? Was it Scott Brown? I can't remember, but that gave the Republicans the filibuster back. But the Democrats made an end run around the filibuster by having the parliamentarian rule that this was a finance bill. And then a few years later, Harry Reid, who had strongly defended the filibuster when he was minority leader, did away with the filibuster when he was majority leader for certain reasons. So, this was bordering. And then when the Republicans regained control of both houses of Congress, what did they do? Well, they didn't act like they controlled both houses of Congress. They acted as if they'd lost the election. As a matter of fact, if you see what's just been passed in the last 24 hours, you see more of the same. And so both the social and the fiscal conservative wings of the Republican Party have felt betrayed. And so they are putting forward Trump as their very strong answer to that. And if Trump doesn't get it, because there's already been talk among the Republican leadership, if they can try to take the nomination away from him at the convention, are you going to see the Republican Party split into the moderate Republicans and the more conservative Republicans? I think it's possible.
Well, it's quite a little story here. One of the issues out there is it's a very diverse country, and there are many people that are estranged from the political process, the way the government works. They're unhappy. They're sort of, I don't know, whatever, Caucasian males live in small towns, like guns, whatever.
Clinging to their guns and religion.
Right, that's right. The whole story. Well, a major part of the country.
There is truth to it.
There's a major part of the country. Yes. And but they are in a minority. And the way the system plays itself out is this minority is going to basically maybe put Donald Trump in as a Republican candidate, and the demographics of the country mean that he could never be elected. So every time the process is you get maybe somebody more to the right than you'd like, and the Democrats someone more to the left, and they both have to move toward the center.
Yes.
But it almost, to say it this way, is there some kind of cabal out there from the Democrats that are encouraging putting Donald Trump in as the very sinister sort of Machiavellian dynamics? Let's make sure our opponent is Donald Trump, because from a demographic point of view, we know he will lose. It's interesting to look at. I don't know. Occasionally, you see people of different ethnic groups that he's offended. I mean, they're just furious with him. Their turnout would be astronomical among those groups in an election.
Well, just speaking as in terms of basic Machiavellian tactics, a member of any party wants his candidate to go up against the weakest possible candidate on the other side. And if you're in a state that allows crossover voting like Georgia, then by all means use that. So yes, I don't think it's spilling any secrets from the Democratic playbook to say that if I were a member of the Democratic National Committee, I'd be praying every night for Trump to get the nomination.
And it appears that every single time he says something that a normal person would say is quite inflammatory, fairly absurd, I say that, and the mainstream press, they pounce on this, they blow the trumpets, aha, he's destroyed himself. Now, all that does is it engenders more support.
Yes, yes.
And we can mention his saying that he would not let Islamic people into the country, I guess, until he'd stop all immigration until they've been appropriately screened. Do you have any comments about that, about immigration in the country? A person can the president do that? I mean, is that legal to stop someone from coming in based on their religion?
Well, it's probably so. Short answer, based on the current development of the law of immigration, the answer is probably yes. Now, if it came right down to it, would the court change its collective mind on that? Possibly. But if you look at the history of America, there is this know-nothing xenophobic streak. It's not an overwhelming one, but it's a pronounced one, especially on certain occasions. There have been times, the 1920s for instance, when we greatly restricted immigration. There have been other times when restrictions on immigration led to Supreme Court litigation, the Chinese exclusion cases of the 1880s and the 1890s. And the bottom line of all this is that the court has generally said that if you are not here or are not from here, then you have no constitutional claim on getting here or being here. Now, once you're actually in the country, then you can start getting some constitutional basis for remaining here, depending on the circumstances. But generally speaking, the idea of the free exercise clause or the establishment clause, and saying that the government's not going to discriminate against you because of your religion, generally doesn't apply if the people you're talking about are not within the country already.
Well, to me, we could maybe just talk about this a little bit. To start with, I mean, if somebody really wants to do us harm, ISIS a person or somebody like that, there are lots and lots and lots of ways to get agents into the country.
Yes.
I mean, there are a zillion ways to do that.
Open borders.
I mean, open. You go to Mexico,
Open
you could come in, you could overstay a visa.
Yes.
You could live in a country that did not have visa requirements. You could just show up there. And how hard is it to check? We have this world community here.
Yes.
Millions of people are coming in from everywhere, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it sort of seems, at least to me, a certain amount of grandstanding going on.
Yes.
I mean, just to make this gesture, okay, I'm going to stop, I'm going to protect you, which is always a difficult situation. I mean, I'm always suspicious, very, very, very suspicious of any politician that claims he would like to protect me.
Well,
I mean, I feel a little nervous about that.
Tyranny always begins when the government says we are doing this for your own good.
Freedom from. I think we've had a little freedom from terror.
Yes.
He's the person that supports freedom.
Yes.
That's right.
And also, although I just said that the religious clauses of the Constitution probably don't come into play here, I will use the religious clauses analysis here and say that statement from Trump would amount to what we call overbreadth. That the odds are the great majority of Muslims are upstanding people. They would be a credit to America, and so we are going to try to go after some of those by locking out all of them. So once again, that's the idea of overbreadth. It catches a lot more people in the net than the people that we're actually trying to capture.
Now, no one likes terrible things that happen, and we have episodic terrible things that happen, and that's bad. But does the media play a role in this a lot? It seems like there's the news cycle, there's competition over ad revenue, and how many people are watching this particular. I hope a fair amount are out there tonight watching us, but the 3 people that are there, welcome.
No, at least a dozen.
Maybe 4.
Yes.
But the idea that the news cycle is so powerful, and anything that's lurid gets huge play, and then it frightens people. It is so easy to frighten someone.
Yes.
And let's say, well, we're in Macon, Georgia. I just can't believe that we have too much danger here from ISIS. I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but I would be pretty astounded if that were the case. And there's this, if you ask what is the fear from this happening, it's a big number. As contrasted, let's say the real danger that would be more realistic would be, I don't know, tripping as you went down the stairs.
Yes, yes.
So you have a lot more danger from tripping on a stairway than you do from and so one of the things that goes on is this great simplification, if I can say it this way, the irrational nature of political discourse. So the politicians are out there and they're attempting to manipulate people based on fears, emotional relationships, and what's rational and irrational just doesn't go into that. Now you mentioned
Yes.
the numbers. So there are, I don't know how many millions of people that are Islamic, how many millions of people we have here. You look at the percentage of whatever's going on here, it's a de minimis number. It's
Yes.
really de minimis. However, if you can manipulate people and you can say, well, look, I've protected you, and really what people say is, I don't like what it's like to go to the mall now, where there are so many people that look alien to me, and I really don't like that, and this is an excuse to go through some subtle ethnic cleansing, if I
Yes.
can phrase it that way.
Well, I would say that something that would be more acceptable, not ethnic cleansing, but the socialization into the American civil religion that we've talked about
Yes.
before. That in the 1860s, 25% of the population of New York had been born in Ireland. I mean, not of Irish extraction, had actually been born in Ireland. And yet, once they came here, they were interested in learning how to be American, how to adapt, how to become America. And eventually, of course, they did. So is this something that we continue to see today? The new cultures that come in, the new ideas, that America becomes more cosmopolitan, but by becoming more cosmopolitan, does it become less America? Do people have the same degree of allegiance to the idea of, for instance, the rule of law or the idea of tolerance? I think that's the danger.
Is the real attraction is the opportunity to obtain money, and more or less not anyone to shoot you. I mean, so you can walk around, it's pretty safe here, and you can certainly get some money. And there are a lot of things that are pretty positive. You can move around. There's a social safety network there. I mean, even if you're an illegal immigrant, you go to the emergency room, you're going to get free treatment and on and on. And
Yes.
so all I guess the cornucopia of good things attract people. And I would ask this question, let's say, what about everyone going to Sweden? Now, I don't know, is this by the same token, well, you have this, are people subscribing to this great, whatever our national psyche is, people that go to Sweden, what is their deal? And is it it may well be a lot more difficult. It may be and the tensions in Europe seem to be playing themselves out in a different fashion.
Yes,
The integration
yes,
of people into Sweden, I mean, that's a rather tough thing. Are you really going to be Swedish if you're from Ethiopia? And I mean,
Yes.
can you really make it as a Swede?
Yes, or let's take a state where you have more immigration going on, Germany, for instance, and you've seen the tensions rising there. It's complicated when you have ease of travel and ease of communication. What does this mean? Does this mean that the United States simply becomes an economic zone? Do we submerge ourselves in our own virtual communities where we have things in common with people that we may never see personally? Could that lead to the breakup of parties? We may be entering an entirely new era of American civilization here,
Well,
driven by demographics and transportation.
you know, if one looks at the demographic curve, say by 2050, there's another billion or so people on the planet, but the great swaths of the European world, if you want to say it that way, and the European American world, their populations are just diminishing. And around the equator, I mean, people are they're like baby factories there, thousands and billions of people there. and it's almost a physical law. There's a place of prosperity and cornucopia of good things, be it Germany, Sweden, Canada, or U.S. And the attraction of those places just so powerful, and the progressive shrinking of the world means that maybe everywhere we're going to, there's something funny going. Funny is the wrong word, but something important is the right word going on in the world where populations are merging and national identities are getting submerged, and really you could make the case that the nation state as we know it won't exist in 100 years.
Yes.
Do you have any comments
well,
about
and
that?
this may be one of the things that that is producing the Trump movement, if you will, that 100 years, that really, without stretching it 50 years ago, this country was essentially ruled by white men. 100 years ago, the women still didn't have the vote. And now white men are dropping very quickly, if they're not there already, into a minority. Something has happened to make a huge combination of events, but something has happened to make them conscious of this. And so you are seeing them turn out in support of what once was. And Trump seems to be the person that they have rallied around.
And this issue is there in other countries, I think.
Yes.
In France, in the Eastern European countries, people are saying, we want things back the way they were. We want to close our borders. That seems to be a pretty substantial event going on.
Yes.
But just getting a little bit into this, the concept of a nation state. You know, what is a nation? I mean, firstly, the borders have to be policed. There has to be some common history, people that are some long decades and years of living together,
yes.
Genetic merging, genes have all sort of meshed with one another, and that's just not happening.
Yeah, that's important. Well, statehood, the modern state, the four typical things you hear are a sovereign government over territory and a population. But for it to be a nation state, you do have to have an ethnic nationality or a national identity or cultural identity of some sort. A lot of times this is ethnic. Maybe in some cases something can be substituted for that. That America has, it started out English, then you add the Germans, still European, then you add the Irish, we're getting away from the Teutonic to the Celtic. And then by the 20th century, you have Eastern European and Asian as well. And yet we still define ourselves as a nation. World War II, we define ourselves as a nation, and we get back to freedom from or freedom to. What defined us as a nation in World War II? Not our ethnicity anymore, but our opposition to authoritarianism. So what will it be in the 21st century?
Well, it's a very difficult question. I'll make one final comment. Is often war is something that it puts causes a more cohesive kind of country.
Yes.
Maybe so sort of like fighting against ISIS or the terrorists. It causes a certain internal cohesion that's useful for people that are trying to, I guess, support an American identity. And my final comment is, it's so important that America have some kind of common moral foundation, yes, because that's the only way we can cleave together.
The American civil religion.
and anything that weakens that is bad.
Yes.
Okay. On that note, thank you,
sir.
Bucky. Thank you. Okay.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.